Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is going to be one of those everything shows with a little bit of everything for everybody. There's a lot to catch up on. I got a text from KJ yesterday from Scariest Movie Ever, and tomorrow we are going to be doing a decode on I Pet Goat 3. Here's the link, and I'll put this link in the pinned comment for everybody to subscribe to his channel and also to check out tomorrow's show. And I waited on I Pet Goat 3 because it definitely looks like some kind of a knockoff. It's lower quality, seems a bit to be thrown together, and I thought I'm not really going to waste my time on it, but it's definitely noteworthy, so I thought I would give my take on it. I know a lot of people have looked at this and want to figure out what it means. I think I boiled it down to what I think it is, which is basically is an Islamic propaganda for people to basically signal in the Antichrist, which they think will bring peace. And so it's a propaganda video bringing in peace. And so this is what it looks like to me. Most of it's in Arabic. But again, we'll do a full breakdown on this with KJ tomorrow. And it looks like 30 hours from now. So that looks like about, let's see, what is that? A little over a day. So a couple hours after this show is where he looks like he scheduled that. So that's that. Now, one of you sent me this morning, and I was just blown away. We've been talking all about the Planet of the Apes and how this fits into what is happening right now. The storyline behind the Planet of the Apes, of course, is man basically going through a portal and discovering that the world that they fall into and arrive at is backwards. It's inverted, and it's a planet where apes rule and not man. So man on that planet become like apes, and apes become like humans with intelligence. And all this is brought about by a simian, Fluru. And we link that in to the what was it, the VCs of the 1950s, the polio VCs that infected people with the simian flu, right? And we tied all that in together, and we talked about how dangerous VCs are, and that the reason why these polio VCs were infected was because they used monkey kidney cells. And then we identified that the VCs that are being developed in China, India, and I think Russia, you'll have to look this up on your own, but they are also using kidney cells from the ape for their VC development. As far as I can tell, the VCs that are on the market here in America are not using the monkey kidney cells, but the others are. And again, that comes down to your own research. But look at this. So now all of a sudden the apes enter the storyline, as we all knew it would, as CNN reports that 2 gorillas at the San Diego Zoo tested positive for CV. This is basically to put the bug in your ear. This is to push along the narrative of the apes. It's also a kind of sorcery. It's supposed to mock us, mock God. This is why they put these stories in here. And look at this. These are, talk about social distancing. Talk about no contact with humans. This gorilla could rip you limb from limb. So most zookeepers don't go anywhere near these animals. So how in the heck did they get it? And this is all meant to make you feel like everything, that this CV is everywhere. It's everywhere. And we can't escape it. So this is part of the psyop when it comes to whatever they're trying to do with this news story, right? So basically, we've entered the Planet of the Apes. Now, I've got a premiere scheduled for next month, and I did that on purpose. I'm going to be doing a little traveling, so I'm going to schedule some of these videos out for the time that I'm traveling, so that you guys have something to look at and absorb. That way you're not just getting 3 or 4 or 5 days of me not uploading anything, so that, some of you really appreciate that I upload every day, and I appreciate you for coming. So I don't want to just leave you hanging. So that's why that's scheduled out. But what you will watch on, I think I scheduled it for the 5th of February, is a decode that I did on the 2001 Planet of the Apes. Many of you will remember it with Mark Wahlberg. And in that, it seems to foreshadow the coming CV-19. Now, that was 19 years ago. So I'm going to show all that to you. And it's not a long decode. It's about 10-15 minutes long. But that's what you will be able to see on the 5th. And I'll continue to queue up. No pun intended. Geez, that whole Q word is just like, whew. We'll queue up videos and decodes that I do that aren't timely, in terms of they don't need to go up like right today, so that you guys can have that. Now, let's get into the next part of today's show. I'm going to make sure we're connected first, because I'm going to break this guy down even further. I mean, this guy right here. Oh, man, this just makes me so mad. So this is Moncef Slaoui, we're going to call him. And I call him the money man. Why? Because this is the guy that Trump hired to head up Warp Speed, to fast track the VC. And we expose this guy. He's into New Age, into Eastern medicine. He's into all these things to try to basically bring about a bioelectronic future in which they implant us with chips and nanotechnology that wrap around your vagus nerve like a serpent and tap in to your life force. The life force that God gave you. The serpent wants to coil around it with this device. This is all in his own words. Well, not the part about the serpent, but he's like, we just want to wrap something around your vagus nerve. That sounds a lot like a snake to me. And this is the guy that Trump hired to head up Warp Speed. And we exposed this guy because we figured that he probably was the one who put this in the symbol, this Reiki energy chakra opening symbol here. This is what it is. We exposed it. And it contains both male and female, because this is the Antakarana symbol, it's called. And it's covering the Health and Human Resources symbol, but it's only masking the faces of the Health and Human Resources symbol. This is our mask. And the Antakarana is differentiated male from female only by these lines here. The thinner lines represent the female, and the thicker line represents the male. So it's combining the two, which is a little bit freaky to me. And we also found that this has Buddhist and Hindu roots. So that's what this is all about. We figured this probably was snuck in there by the Slaoui man. Now, why do I call him the Slaoui man? Well, I live in the Delta of California right now, and we have a lot of what are called sloughs. That's the swamp. I thought we were supposed to be draining the swamp. Now, Slaoui, we're going to call him, because a slough is a swamp, is actually going to be held over from the Trump administration over into Biden so that he can administer the bite. And this whole Biden thing, gosh, his last name was so loaded. Biden. So this was the Biden psyop, right? Biden. And look at everyone's like, bye. And then here we are, Biden. Now, all these people are working together. That's what I'm trying to get you guys to understand. Now, what else is going on? On to the next story. Well, this is pretty huge, and this one went right over my head. It was one of you that pointed this out. And I was like, whoa, I love you guys. You guys are amazing. Now, this is a real billboard from 1939. This is the Trump family. It's documented only one place on the internet, and I suspect that they will probably take this down after it's been exposed. It's one of those glitches in the matrix that got through the cracks. The Queen's Chronicle is the one who covered this. It's the only source on the entire internet. You cannot find this billboard anywhere. This billboard actually existed at the 1939 World's Fair, which was seated dead center in the Queens County, Flushing Meadows, Corona of New York, right next to Jamaica Estates, where the Trump family grew up. And here it is. And one of you figured this out. You're like, Casey, that's an RX in his name. Or I'm like, it sure is. That's an RX symbol, which means prescription. Now, what could this possibly mean? Well, this needle right here was called the Trilon. And of course, there are Trilon hypo needles. There's actually a brand of hypo needles called Trilon, which is the exact name of that monument that we just looked at. Here it is right here. This was patented on 1966. So, what is this all about? Well, this is about some secret. Now, this was a billboard about the homes of tomorrow. And of course, they wanted to dovetail this in with the World's Fair of 1939. It was all about the future. 6,000 people live in Trump homes, it says. And we talked about how the steps look like the seat of Satan, the Pergamon. Now, these are prescription drugstores of the era in the 1930s. I wanted to show you this. I always get naysayers, so I got to be very thorough on this channel. Casey, that symbol didn't exist in the 1930s. You're making all this up. No, it did. Here's one such drugstore. And there you see the RX. Now, here's the creepy thing about the RX. This is right out of the History Channel's stories. This is the history of the RX. Where did the RX symbol come from? So zooming in here. Commonly seen on doctor prescription pads and signs in pharmacies, RX is a symbol of medical prescription. According to most sources, RX is derived from the Latin word for recipe, meaning take. Among several alternative theories, however, is the belief that the RX symbol evolved from the Eye of Horus, an ancient Egyptian symbol associated with healing powers. Do you see how this goes opposite to the healing power of the Son of God? And there's no faith in God with this. It's a magical power done with pharmakia. What is known for certain is that the practice of pharmacy, the preparation and dispensation of drugs, has been around for thousands of years. So, there you go. Now, what do I have here? I want to do an update on this mural. This also appeared at the 1939 World's Fair. And in a quick glance of the mural, I made an error here. And so I want to clarify this error. Now, obviously, there's the pyramid, an all-seeing eye, as you can see here. And they're using electricity. Man and woman intertwined together. This might have something to do with unisex. But they are using the apotheosis, elevating themselves as gods, using the mark in the right hand to rule over humanity. This was in 1939. They did away with their plows and plowshares and wagon wheels, all at the bottom, and this is supposed to represent the advancement. Now, a couple things I missed on this were that there's also pyramids in the background. This looks a lot like Giza. Now, they're mountains, of course, or hills, but they're also representative of like Giza. Also, she's spreading these stars out of her other hand. Okay, this is the fallen stars, the fallen angels. Now, we notice that these were arches. Okay, arches of triumph, arches of Trump, arches of Palmyra. But where I got it wrong was I'm looking over here, and people said that this side is the dark arts. At first, I thought that this was us and those who reject their advancement, reject their technology, that they're going to put us over here and we're all going to be poor. But many of you notice, no, this is way too dark of a scene. This is more like the dark arts. And here you see like a cauldron. And these people are very like evil and dark. Now, the weird thing is that these people at the top, the elite, are using the dark arts to rule over us. Okay. So this thing is loaded. So I want to just clarify my findings on that. Now let's get into the meat of the show and why you guys all came here, because I wanted to just recount the history here on YouTube. I've been on here since 2011, 2012. And as long as I've been on YouTube, everybody's been trying to find ways to get off of YouTube. Now, why is that? Well, YouTube started messing with us very early on. Started dropping channels, and this started happening right about the time I came on to YouTube. And in the beginning, they would just delete channels. They would just deplatform you, or they would just remove your video. That was their first tactic. But then at a certain point, as YouTube began to grow, they began to realize that they could make money off of the truth community. So what they did is the truth community then was influxed with a lot of commercial grade YouTube channels. These were massive channels that grew very quickly, that had very high editing quality. You could tell that there was a team of people behind these YouTube channels, because contrary to popular belief, it is very difficult to do what we do. You're talking about uploading videos. You're talking about, first off, before you even upload a video, you have to know what you're talking about. You have to be prepared. You have to have some kind of gift to find these symbols. And I'm not just talking about, oh, there's a pyramid and there's an all-seeing eye. I'm talking about connecting concepts from various places, seeing the patterns, and also the work ethic. I work on this YouTube channel about 6 to 8 hours a day. And the very small part of it that you see, the live show, was based off of a lot of research, a lot of time, and me being totally immersed in the work. In other words, I don't just do this part-time and put it away and get to go fishing all day. It's not how this works. You have to be immersed in the work, totally and completely, so that when you see a sign or a symbol, you can grab it. And that's how I put my tabs up for the shows. So I wanted to give you a snapshot into what happens on a YouTube channel and how difficult it is just to even know what you're talking about, okay? And not get burned by spreading disinformation by accident or intentionally. So it was weird in 2011-12 when I started my channel to see some of these channels who just came up and seemed completely organized, perfect editing skills, polished work, and seemed to always have content to upload, because that takes years and years and years to get to that point where you can just open up the news cycle and see the connections and then present it to the people on your channel. And look, many of you know, you saw the way this channel was back in 11 and 12. I think I was probably a lot more emotional back then. I made a few mistakes about things I was looking into because I was experiencing my own awakening. And, the quality was far less. We had a lot of technical problems back then. And when you see someone come on and there's no technical problems and they're just boom, boom, boom every single day, or they're just tying up your time talking about nothing, or just hacking the headlines, then you know that you're dealing with something that might not be what it seems. So basically what happened is YouTube was like, hey, we're going to make money off of this. So they allowed these channels to kind of rise to the top. Channels that they knew wouldn't be a direct threat to them or that would play into their agenda. I'll give you a prime example. Look at where we are now. The biggest honey trap in history. All those people went there. Well, think to yourself, what kind of YouTube channels were they watching that made them want to go do that? And I can name a handful. I won't name them, but these would be the channels that would plant the seed of, you better do something right now. You better take something and pick up something and go do something right now. This is it. If you don't do something now, this is it. Those would be the channels that cause those people to go walk right into a honey trap. So that would play along with the agenda of what they want. And then on the back end, YouTube can continue to make money on those channels by monetizing them. You see how this works? So that happened. That was already starting to happen in 2012, 2013. We had huge channels making money hand over fist and helping YouTube get rich and grow out their brand in the truth community. So we were already infiltrated back then. And then what happens is these sensationalized channels, many of them are gone now, and I'll tell you why that happened. It wasn't because they were legitimate. It's because they create basically a clone by which other channels take that model, that business model, because they think it represents success. They see a bunch of attention given to those channels, so they adopt that particular model. And then when YouTube wants to come through and sweep the floor, they simply go in and they pull all those channels down that mirrored all those videos and so on and so forth. Now, this is just my opinion on what I believe has happened after my experience of being here on YouTube. Okay. It's funny now because some people will try to come onto this channel and try to discredit us based on the size of the channel, and they have no idea how we scraped and clawed to get to the point we're at now over the last 8 years, when all of our peers have far exceeded our numbers. Now, of course, not every single big channel falls into this category, okay? But just understand, because there were a lot of channels that were around since 2008, like KJ. He's my friend. I believe him and trust him because he's been around even twice as long as I have. So it makes sense that he would have the following that he would have. But think about the channels that came on the scene in the last 2 years, 5 years, and how they've exploded with a quarter of the type of work that dedicated and long-standing channels have put in. So my point is I believe that during that era, 2013, 14, 15, I think a lot of those mega channels were controlled op, creating a model for channel styles to adopt and, thinking it was a formula for success, kind of like the C to the I to the A Pied Piper hustle. And this is what they do. This is their game plan, the C to the I to the A. They create something and then they bring it down. They co-opt movements. That's their signature style. They did it after Blind 11, in fact, so they could brag about how they stopped these plots. Well, in actuality, if you dig deeper into what they did, they just found weak-minded people. They gave them an idea. They funded them. And then when the person went to go purchase the whatever, they just arrested them. So it was all just co-opted. So this is why you got to be careful with channels sometimes, okay? If they're asking you to mirror all their work and a lot of and then you start seeing signs of them stepping outside of the YouTube terms and conditions intentionally every single video, doing it on purpose, almost to try to get their channel taken down, then that's when you need to watch out. And you guys know the channels. They have over-the-top styles, regularly breaking YouTube terms and conditions. And then what happens when they get taken down? All the other channels come down with them. Then we had the Alex Jones era. And he was the master at getting people to copy his style so then they could just go through and sweep the floor and wash away all of YouTube, all the people that copied his channel format. Because, and look what he did. Look at the mind manipulation and the psyop. Turned everyone, or a lot of people that followed him, into angry, loudmouth people that were completely counterproductive to making any real change. Because they were simply, you couldn't listen to them. And you notice the styles are very similar between him and like a Mr. T, right? They have very similar styles because that's what they want, because that represents chaos and instability. And they thrive, the elite thrive off of that chaos and instability so that nothing real can ever get done. So that they can come on to, so that the elite can go to their main media outlets and pretend like they're all calm and collected and under control. And then they show the opposition to that. They show the juxtaposition of the crazed right-wing nut. It fits right into their paradigm. And this is why you got to be careful. And a lot of people say, well, Alex Jones was the first person I watched that woke me up. Well, that's kind of like saying, I'm trying to think of a really good example. It's kind of like saying, well, the organized religious church woke me up. Yeah, they did, but do you want to stay there? Because if you stay there, you get lumped in with exactly what is happening right now. The right-wing nut, right? The judgy Christian we know that things are wrong and immoral and we shouldn't be doing them and we should warn people. But some people that's their entire Christian experience, is going around pointing the finger at other people and pointing out their sins and not looking at their own. It fits into the hypocritical paradigm. And so you got to step outside of that and realize that your spirituality and your love for God doesn't need a church building, because they're controlled by the 501c3, that you can have a direct connection to God and His Son, opening up your Bible. So, a little bit more on the history of YouTube, because it now we've come down to a new era and a new psyop. So, right about that time after Jones went down, Jonesboro I call him, people caught wind of this, and they caught wind of the game, and then we had this trend towards smaller channels, and people are like, most of these, they got it. They're like, wow, most of these larger channels, they're kind of weird. They're either right-wing all the way, and we know that there's a right-left paradigm. We've got to step outside of that. So why are they pushing these candidates? Why are they pushing the right all the time? And people woke up to it, and then they started trending toward the smaller channels, understanding that those smaller channels probably held a lot more truth than the larger ones. And this went on for a few years. And then the larger channels started getting very aggressive about getting off of the YouTube platform. Now, it's been going on since the beginning, but it really intensified over these last 2 or 3 years. And I've been around for many of these platforms. They've come and gone. We had Zeekly. We had Daily Motion. We had Vimeo. And then later we had BitChute and Gab, DLive. We had Steemit. And then Patreon helped channels to stay financially afloat when YouTube would demonetize them. But after all this time and watching and learning over the years, I realized one thing, that if you look at all of these sites, these alternative sites, and you open up their terms and conditions section, almost every single one has a clause talking about community guidelines. Now, there has to be a reason why we can't migrate the truth community to these other platforms. And I begin to think about this, and I begin to think, why do we fail every single time? Well, I think it's failure by design. We're going to talk about what those reasons are. And understand that no platform to date has been able to duplicate what YouTube does. And I believe this is intentional. They were never designed to be as effective as YouTube, because they are honey traps. And this is the huge white elephant in the room that nobody really wants to talk about. Now, Google owns YouTube. They have since 2006. And in the beginning, you didn't really feel that. You didn't really feel the influence of Google on YouTube in 2006. But shortly after that, they began to tighten the screws. And what started happening was you begin to see how, to protect Google's interests in YouTube, they would basically shave off the alternative platforms from any search that you did in Google. Now, we know that most people use Google as their search engine. You and I can't change that. You know, if every single truth person on YouTube did a video saying, everybody get off of Google, we still would barely make a dent in people using Google as a search engine. It's a losing battle. It's just not going to happen. We've already tried it. People used Bing, they used other search engines, but at the end of the day, people are going to use Google. So Google, to protect their interest in YouTube, simply just don't show the results for BitChute. They just don't show video results for the alternative video hosting platforms. And that's how they control it. They control every angle of video hosting platforms on the internet. Complete and total control. And they will do anything they can to protect their video hosting platform by favoring YouTube in the search results and starving out the other platforms. It's a straight up monopoly. And this is why, just by its very definition, that no other video hosting platform will be successful. And that has not changed until that gets addressed, until the monopoly that Google has on the search engines gets addressed. Nothing will change. Unless, and this is where you get into peering behind the veil and understanding the true dynamics of what is going on with the leadership in America on both the right and the left. We saw the power of presidential endorsement on Twitter. He was able to amass 88 million followers. Isn't that interesting? Before they took him down, what have we been talking about since the beginning of this channel? The number 88. Time and space. Complete and total control. And this begs the question, if Trump was about, giving Twitter and YouTube and every other platform who tried to censor him a run for their money, why wouldn't he immediately support some of these other alternative platforms by mentioning them often and every day? Every time he would mention a Gab or a BitChute, guess what would happen? That many less people of the 88 million would go over to those platforms just to check it out. And he could tweet or Gab with immunity. He could have been doing that for this since the very first time that Twitter tried to censor him. He could have started doing this. Why won't he do it? It's because it's all a manipulation and a joke. That's why he won't do it. Has he ever mentioned Gab? Has he ever mentioned BitChute? Has he ever mentioned any of these alternative platforms that claim to provide a place for you to go to have free speech? He never has. And if he has, maybe he did it once. But he should have opened an account over there. He should have uploaded all of his Gabs and whatever. And this is why I've never gone to these alternative platforms. I think I tried Dailymotion once or twice and Vimeo. But then that was way back 5 years ago. And I realized the psyop. I was like, this is intentional. They're basically getting me to spread my resources to upload all these other channels and to all these other platforms. And there's something going on here. Now here's what needed to happen years ago. Google's monopoly on video hosting needed to be broken up. And how that happens, I really don't know. But I'm going to take it a step further and assert that these alternative video platforms are plants to draw people and creators away from YouTube so that they're rounded up easily. They can easily identify the entire site, just like they did with Parler, right? And they can identify all this and they can take them down all at once. Now you're starting to see behind the veil because Trump had many options. He did not have to stay on Twitter. He could have immediately affected Twitter's bottom line a long time ago. And even now, as he's nearing the end of his presidency, he still won't recommend a Gab or a BitChute because it's intentional. He doesn't want to give them any airtime. He wants them to stay in their little echo chamber. He doesn't want any spotlight shine on these alternative websites because the right and the left are working together. He wants them to remain invisible. When you do a Google search, it's invisible. By the way, his worst speed pick is a Google puppet. And if he were to endorse these sites, it would mean that their stock would increase and they would be successful, and people would be peeled away from Twitter, peeled away from YouTube, and YouTube would lose money overnight. Even right now, he could do it. Even though he's lost a lot of his popularity, right now, today, Trump could say, I'm moving all my followers over to BitChute. I'm moving all my followers over to Gab. It's all a setup. And if you don't see that, then I don't know what to tell you. And I'm going to take it a step further and tell you that I believe a lot of these sites are C to the I to the A shell sites, intentionally hidden in echo chambers so they can be monitored, controlled, and eventually dismantled. We don't know when that's going to happen, but it's kind of happening right now. They're going through and deleting accounts in sites as we speak. I don't know what 2021 is going to look like, but all it takes is a Democrat getting up on a podium and saying, look at the videos we found on this hosting platform. Look at this. We can't have this. And putting pressure on the server to alleviate and delete it. And so much for free speech. Do you see how the monopoly has to be broken up first? Otherwise, we're just spinning our wheels and wasting our time. Now, I'm not asserting that anybody using these platforms knows what I'm talking about or is part of it. I do want to make that clear, because I know a lot of channels have been very aggressive about getting people off onto these sites. And I'm not saying that they are shills or anything like that. They probably have good intentions. But you see, all these alt sites, remember they were all infiltrated by Q, and Q became the face of a lot of these alt sites. And now Mr. T has set in motion a cascade of censorship and deplatforming that is unprecedented in history. They're even trying to censor Ron Paul. That's the latest that I heard. Where do you think the easiest place for the powers that be, for them to find us or find alternative people, all grouped up and bunched up on these sites? So, what's the answer? It's the same answer and the only answer. A president needs to call out the video hosting platform monopoly for what it is, and it needs to be deconstructed immediately. So that when those advertising dollars start draining away from YouTube and from their platform, they'll think twice about erasing content creators that are resonating with their subscribers and helping YouTube to grow. Because right now, YouTube is operating with full immunity. And new content creators are basically not trying to bust down the door to get in on the YouTube platform. And YouTube just gets to sit back like a fat cat and select who they want on their platform. And they just scrub away the people that they don't. And you and I both know that most business models would not, or most businesses would not survive a week with that kind of business model. But for some reason, Google YouTube does. Because they're the only show in town. And they keep it that way by propping up YouTube in the Google search results. Anyway, I thought I'd give you guys a little history lesson about the real problem and how we can fix it. And Trump should have been on this since the beginning of his presidency. He could have easily started to shave away market share from these big platforms. And he could have supported or created his own platform. But now it's too late. He still has a couple weeks or a week left. Maybe this will be, maybe we can have some faith in this guy. But dude, if you're playing 5D chess, you need to create a counterbalance. You could have helped grow other platforms a long time ago. And there's this big white elephant in the room of what could have been done, but that wasn't. Let's go into the chat now. Appreciate everybody coming out to the show. I'm looking forward to tomorrow's show with KJ. And what's going on here? Antitrust laws. That's exactly what it is. Break up that monopoly. Because truth community is not a majority. I agree with that. But what was his thing that he liked to complain about? Censorship. So how do you beat that? You simply help people get off the platform. Easily could have done that. Let me give you an example. Look how much the stocks rose in the companies that were picked for warp speed. He got up there and could sell that. Remember? Pulled out the medical equipment. Right? And what happened to those stocks? It went through the roof. If he can do that for them and the rich billion, trillion-dollar pharmaceutical companies, why couldn't he do that for us? It would have been very, very easy to do. But he didn't. The tweets could have went something like this. Hey guys, Twitter's starting to censor us. Let's go to a different site. Guess what? Gab triples in the number of subscribers there. And then he goes over to Gab and makes Gab give Twitter a run for their money. Why wouldn't he do that? I don't know. Now, this isn't rocket science, you guys. People can say, oh, he didn't have time to think about those things. Well, that became his downfall. Him getting scrubbed off of these platforms. So if you're anticipating the next move of the enemy and you're playing 4 or 5D chess, why wouldn't you know that you need to create your own platforms for your voice? You would need to know that right from the very beginning. So if he was on his own show, The Apprentice, he would have been fired for not anticipating that. But it's not about his ability, his mental ability to foresee these things. This was intentional. That's what I'm trying to get you guys to understand. He could have easily done it, and he knew he could have done it. He intentionally didn't, because all this is a game. It's all theater. For them to keep control and to pretend like they're opposing each other, for the left to pretend like they hate them, and then they sweep the floor. And now it's a power grab. And now you're seeing the true elite in this country reveal themselves. They're just going to wipe away all dissenting voices from the internet, and that's going to be it. The one thing that he could have done was to set up and establish and promote alternative media. That would have been the one thing that would have told me that he had true integrity. The one thing. If he accomplished nothing else, maintaining people's freedom of speech and expression would have told me something that he was different, but we did not see that. Instead, we saw just a pissing match, basically. So, good question. It's been a setup all along. I agree 100%. The Trump card. A lot of people are taking down their social media profiles. I guess Twitter took a hit because they tried to silence Mr. T. 10% drop in shares. I'm wrong, says a judge book. Tell me why. Tell me why. Isn't there a song? Tell me why. Tell me sweet little lie. I tried to approve his comment, but it went by too fast. The swamp was the conservative Christian. Exactly. They threw us under the bus. Set up your own system, says James Manfield. Absolutely. Bailed on us. Yep. You're wrong. You don't know. Okay, tell us why, Mr. Judge or whatever. Try to prove your comment. I really want to see what your opinion is on that. You can't. You don't just get to say I'm wrong. You have to explain why I'm wrong. What did Trump gain? He is losing everything. No, he's not losing everything. He has hundreds of millions of dollars. He made more money than any presidential candidate in history. A lot of that's going to his quote unquote defense fund, but there are very loose rules on how he can use that money. Only 25% goes to the Republican National Committee. He'll mark my words, he will start a TV show and they will let him say and do whatever he wants on that show. He hasn't lost anything. His family is richer and all his billionaire friends are richer than they ever have been before. If you don't know about the billionaires and how they got so much richer during the spamdemic, then you need to do some more research. He has not lost everything. This is all part of the game because Americans love competition. We love a contest. We love our side. We love our teams. So make no mistake, he has not lost everything. We've had the biggest surge of censorship. This guy keeps going on. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Tell us why. Oh, that's Marcy. Sorry, Marcy. Let's show your comment there. So we've had the biggest surge of censorship on YouTube than I can even remember in any recent history. And nothing was done. And people can say, oh, that's because they're against the right. That's the right-left paradigm. I just told you how we could have fixed the problem, how he could have fixed the problem. In 10 tweets, he could have fixed the problem. 10 minutes of his time, he could have fixed the problem. By immediately drawing people away from Twitter. Hey guys, we're not using Twitter anymore. There's already a site set up. It's called Gab. It's just like Twitter. We're just going to use that. And guess what? If Gab started having problems, let's say they needed to grow and they didn't have the money, guess what would happen? It would have grown organically. After all those people would have came to Gab, they could have fixed any technical issues or errors that they had. But see, it's not about that. He never wanted that. This was all just a game. And a lot of us fell for it. He still has time. But now he doesn't have a voice anymore, so where would he announce Gab? Where would he say that at? I don't know. He could start a Gab account today. He'd probably have 30 million followers in one day if word got out that he started a Gab account. Why won't he do it? These are the questions you need to ask yourself. Once you step outside of the right-left, you begin to think critically, and you go, why is the right doing that? Or why is the left doing this? What's the chess move on that maneuver? And then you begin to open your eyes. Okay. This is the biggest honey trap in world history. So many people were fooled. And now they're just going through and sweeping the floor. It's going to take them a while to sweep the floor. We're trying to stay below the radar here. We've learned to be wise and not fall for the traps. All of those flags that happened that were false, a lot of those were traps. Because as soon as people started reporting on it, they would just wipe their channel away. You even see people in the alternative weather community getting taken down because they adopt the model for their channel as the bigger giant channels are using, and then all of a sudden they all get taken down. Gotta really be careful. He does have a Gab, says Ricardo. Well, why isn't he promoting that? I would be promoting it on every single tweet leading up to what happened on the 6th. Every single tweet. Guys, go to Gab. Guys, go to Gab. Go to Gab. We're going to get off Twitter. What if he said, we're getting off Twitter, we're going to Gab? Guess what happens? Everybody goes to Gab because they want to hear what he has to say and hear his tweets. Right? So he may have an account, but he didn't do anything to promote it. And that tells you everything you need to know right there. All right. Trump kissed the wall. Yeah. That's a whole nother story right there. All right, we're gonna pop off of here. Love each and every one of you. We'll be back on here tomorrow with, what was I gonna do tomorrow? I always forget. We'll figure it out. It's listed there. We already got tomorrow's live show already queued up. Love you guys.